Good afternoon. Welcome to today's session. We'll get started. I'm here together with Michiel Kuipers. He'll introduce himself a little bit later. And now we're going to talk about the most frequently asked questions of last year. That means that we're going to reiterate a little bit about what kind of questions got in. But before we do that, let me first get back to the start. So welcome. It's session number 9 of the Ask Me Anything sessions. Today, we're going to talk about the frequently asked questions. Michiel Kuipers will do most of the talking, but I will do a bit of an introduction before we get there. So before we ever get to the content, I'll look back a little bit with you guys to see what we did last time and to look a bit ahead of what we're going to do today. So last time, we looked at the architecture quality as a new feature that we recently introduced. This feature really looks at the architecture of your software more so, or even more so, than what the maintainability measurements of Sigrid already did and already do. We looked at the impact. We looked at what you can use it for and who can use it best. So there's different angles to that. The session was also recorded, as is the session of today. So that means also that you are able to watch it back. We'll publish it online. It's going to happen anytime soon. And once we do, we'll let you know so you know where to find it and can rewatch it. That for last time. If we then look at today, we're going to look at Sigrid Service Management. Michiel Kuipers is part of that team. And they receive quite a lot of questions about how Sigrid can be used and how to set it up. Those questions come in through our Sigrid support channel. There's different ways. The best way to get there is whenever you're logged into Sigrid, here up top in the top right, there's a question mark and you get to the form that you see here. Just to give you an idea as to where you can leave your questions. It's in the form here on the left-hand side, but also you can directly email or call them, whatever works best for you. There's different ways to contact them, but it's a way and a good way to get to support, to our support. To put things into perspective, when we look at some statistics of things that we did, especially when we look at the number of questions of last year, it's a little short of 10,000, right? 9,300, which is quite a lot of questions. And of those 9,300 questions, we curated the set of a handful that we can handle in 1 hour session. Some other things that you may or may not have seen before, we have about 300 technologies that Sigrid supports. And as of today, analyses that Sigrid does, whatever you throw at us, within 5 minutes, 93% is done the other way around. Yeah. Some other things, we have 250 plus customers across the world who upload about 7,500 systems. So it's quite a lot. Things in perspective. Let's continue to the content of today. I don't want to stand still at this point too much. What type of questions did we receive over the past year? Yeah. 3 groups, basically, we want to create in that. That's about analyses and tooling. So what kind of models and metrics and tooling we use. It's about configuration and setting up Sigrid. So what do you need to do to set Sigrid up and make it work for you? And last but definitely not least, it's about the workflow. So how do you employ Sigrid to the best interest of you? Per group, we have a few questions that we want to handle. Let's see how far we get. We'll do it in some kind of Q&A session. So I'll ask some of the questions. Michiel is sitting next to me, and he's gonna do the content part of that. So let's first dive into the first a group of questions about analyses and tooling. So questions that we grouped under here under this category are, for example, can I set my own rules? For example, what I do already in SonarQube, and or can I suppress any findings? Second question is on the right. It's what kind of tooling do you actually use when you look at security scanning? There's lots of stuff out there. We may or may not have already something. How do you approach this? And last but not least, it's about the test code. So is test code part of the maintainability metrics? Yes or no? Maybe I want it, maybe I don't want it. It's a good question. I don't know.
Indeed.
So maybe we can just get started with the first question.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So indeed, our customers they they use Sigrid to get a score, the star rating. And of course, then people will also ask these questions that we have here for you. Let's start with the first one. Can I set my own rules or suppress findings? Yeah, that's one that we hear a lot. In order for that, you need to know a bit about our approach. So if we talk about maintainability, code quality, we think that we have a nice set of metrics that apply for all our customers across the globe. So there is actually no need to add some extra rules there, in our opinion, our modest opinion. If we talk about security, we of course think that there can be extra security rules that you want to have, and maybe run some security tools. And then if you export those with Sarif format, then we can actually import it. So the question, can I set my own rules? No, if you're talking for code quality. Yes, if you're talking for security.
Yeah, so if we're looking at the maintainability, the code quality part first, maybe it's a good idea to show a bit what that looks like in Sigrid, because you can have some false positives here and there, right? Or you can have some findings that you do or do not want to pick up.
Yeah, indeed. That's the second part of this question. So suppressing findings. A lot of our customers, they are acquainted with other code quality tools, and then those tools, those are mostly violation based. So they just give you a warning, and then without any context. So there it's maybe more logical that you can say, yeah, but this warning, I don't want to see that warning anymore. I don't agree. I don't want it. So what we have for that is the fact that you can accept a finding and accept the risk that it imposes, but accepting the risk will not give you a free star rating. So that's I'm going to show you. So if we go to Sigrid, how does this work? So we are in the Open Demo portfolio here. Let's say we work at a company called Open Demo. We have 73 systems, and all these tiles, there are large IT projects. And we are today interested, we are working at Hadoop, that's our team. We are in the Hadoop team, in the backend division, team architecture, and we are looking at our score here. And we see that we have 2.6, which is a bit below average. You know that our star rating, 3 stars, is the average. But let's go then in the suggestions that Sigrid does to you to improve this maintainability for this system. In this case, you see the weighted average here, 2.6. But if you look at the individual quality aspects, then there are some aspects that are a bit below, or even module coupling, for example, is quite low. Volume is a bit below 3 stars. But let's look at maybe you want to do a bit on the unit complexity, because that's 2.5, and that's a bit on the low side. So then we present to our customers the refactoring candidates. Those are suggestions that we do. They are not violations, but they're suggestions that we do for you to improve. And if you fix those, then we will guarantee that the source code quality goes up the most. But let's say you are looking at those, or I said the other criteria. I said unit complexity. So if we look here, then here we present these findings, and what a customer can do is observe the finding, look at it. We have code snippet viewing. We tell you where it is and how long it is, and the McCabe index. But what people can do is they can decide on the status of this finding. So either they prioritize and make this finding something that they want to pick up, or they accept the risk. So accepting the risk it's not the same as suppressing, but it is our approach to making sure that these findings, they are in your code base. The fact that you accept it is good, because then you have talked about it, and we can also see who pressed the button in the audit trail. But the fact that you accept it does not mean that it's gone.
Yeah.
So I sometimes get questions of people. They say, yeah, I've accepted these risks, but my score doesn't go up. Then I have to explain to them, yeah, you really must fix those issues before the score can go up.
If you want to get the higher score, you need to get rid of them as well.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, but that's our approach, and other tools have different approaches. So we have this approach.
Yeah, it also has a benefit, right? I mean, if we the way we look at code quality is relatively objective, or as objective as it can be,
Yeah.
which has the benefit that you can also compare your code to other code.
Yeah, indeed.
And that's what the star rating then brings you.
Yeah. So this benchmark, which is behind that, will make sure that we can compare your code quality against other systems in your company or even across companies. And if everybody could set their own rules and make their own exceptions, then we would be in mayhem.
Yeah. If everyone can decide their own rules,
that would be nice.
It's really hard to understand and to collaborate together.
No, indeed.
And that's, I think, where Sigrid really comes into place.
Yeah.
But if we look at, so we look now at maintainability findings and about accepting those risks, which is not really suppressing.
No, it's not really suppressing. It's a different approach. But the other question is, what about test code? So if you talk about code quality, we take into account the part of the code that we call production code.
Mm-hmm.
So actually, we see three divisions of code. We see the code which is generated. You should not touch it. You should just let it be generated, and that's fine. Then there is the code that is used for production, really the code that has your functionality. And then there is also the test code, of course. And what we do in Sigrid, and we have an example here in Hadoop system, is that we give you a ratio, 87% ratio of test code. And we also explain in the different components that we see how much test code is there in that race, what is the ratio for that component. So this dev support has 0, and the Hadoop Cloud Storage project has 9.5, and this one has 75. So there is a kind of a distribution between the components.
Yeah.
But we do not take this percentage does not add up to the star rating.
Ah, yes. So maybe a follow-up question on this. I mean, you're talking about ratio.
Yeah.
What
is a ratio?
We have coverage.
Yeah,
what is ratio?
You know the word coverage, right?
Yeah.
Test coverage is something that we cannot give you because we cannot run your code on our servers. This is static code analysis. So what we do is we come very close to this number that you would get with coverage, and we have found out after years of work that having the ratio, meaning literally the percentage between production code and test code, that number is actually also a very good predictor of how much test code there is. Yeah,
so the test code ratio, in a sense, is if you have 100%, you would have, one line of test code and one line of production code at the same time, right?
Exactly.
And that means 100%.
And that 100% is actually also what we advise our customers. If we see that there is no test code, then we would say, your teams are not prepared for automated testing and that stuff, CI stuff. So we would say to the customer, please go to 100% of test code. Yeah,
and that brings then a change in your workflow. But let's postpone that type of question line, because we have that coming up later on.
Yeah, indeed.
If we take one step back, we're now at the code. We're looked at findings. We looked at suppressing findings, accepting findings. Then on the other end, we have something like security scans.
Yes.
Where you can also have findings that may or may not be things that you want to pick up.
Yeah, that's a very good question. How do you curate security findings, and how do we get security findings? So that was one of our top questions: is what kind of tooling do you run? So it's good to understand that for maintainability. So this item here, we have our own tooling. So we run our own software analysis.
Yes.
But for security, we actually are broadening up. So we are expanding, and we want to be the umbrella for customers to solve their, we call that the tool soup. We solve all those tools that you need to run individually as a customer. We can run them for you.
Yes.
And those findings combined, we will present those findings combined in a dashboard to you. That's also the advantage that we think that Sigrid can do for you. It's like an umbrella combining all these different sources of findings.
Yeah, so it's both combining all the information, but also, I mean, what SRG also does is installing those tools for you on our own premises in the cloud, right?
Yeah.
We curate the rules that we scan.
Yeah.
We try to filter out some of the very obvious false positives.
Yes.
But then after that step, I think it's up to the customer to pick it up. Isn't it?
Yeah. So that every customer has this department called the CISO, the security department, and they have people that work at the customer to curate these findings. And if they go into the security section, we present the findings here on top. So there are the findings are presented also in these color gradients of criticals and less criticals. In this case, we have 1,400 findings, which is quite a lot. But what we do is we group them for you. So we group them into the OWASP top 10. We have other groupings, by the way. We've recently added also this OWASP for low code. But there's a lot of groupings that we do, and those groupings will help you to prioritize. So that's what we want to help you to group, prioritize, curate, and then start fixing the stuff that really matters most. So in this case, we can look at, for example, at critical findings. Those are these dark red ones, and there's a lot of findings in this list. But if we say, for example, we had about the workflow of these findings. So let's look at the finding here that here's the origin of that we found this finding through a tool called SecBugs, find SecBugs, and we present the finding, we show you the code where it is, and we'll give you a rating and the status. It starts with role. Starts with role, meaning that someone on your office needs to look at it and look at how to change the status. So for maintainability, we have less statuses. We have just accept and will fix. Here we also have will fix and accept, but we also have a refined one, and we also have a fixed and a false positive one.
Yeah, so that's different from maintainability, and the reason for that, if I understand you correctly, is because there's also a bit of context.
Yeah.
That needs to be taken into place.
Yeah, that's true. So the context that this is a tool that does static code analysis, as I said, it does not know the context. It does not know if this is behind a firewall or whatever measures you also have.
Yeah. So one of the questions that we got started and why we are here now at the security findings is, what kind of tooling do you use?
Yeah, what kind of tooling? Yeah. So actually we also run SonarQube. So let me show you. So in the findings section, we have activity and origin, and let's go to the origin. Origin for us is, where do these findings come from? So we have, this is from Facebook and Find SecBugs and Flaw Finder, and Kix is from Checkmarks. We can also run Checkmarks. That's an extra premium, but we can run a lot of tools. And these tools will all spit out findings depending on the technology that you're using in your system.
Yeah. So what you also mentioned just a bit earlier is the fact that we also ingest findings from other tools.
Yeah. So if you Sarif, right? That's Sarif. Yeah, Sarif is a format that if you put that into the upload, we will read those Sarif files and we'll give the contents of those Sarif files a nice place in this list, so that you can manipulate and curate and work on those findings and do your workflow in the same environment.
Yeah.
Which gives you one comprehensive overview of all the tools that you actually need.
Yeah.
You can see that there's SonarQube here. So we're running SonarQube for Java. We don't use SonarQube for the maintainability because we have our own tool for that. You also see the open source health.
Yeah, which is something that I don't recognize.
No, I understand. Right? It is a tool that we have written ourselves. So it's actually, we can call it a dependency checker. There are also competitors for dependency checking, of course. It's called software composition analysis, SCA. And we have the relation between these security findings here and open source health is the following. If you go to the top menu option of open source health, we give you a list. It's like an inventory of all the libraries that your team has included in your project. So this is called also a bill of materials. You can export it as a SBOM file, software bill of materials. It's mandatory in the US nowadays. But some of these findings are related to, for example, the freshness. How old are these libraries? Some have legal issues, but there are also some that have a vulnerability issue. And then this open source health finding becomes really a security risk.
Yeah.
And that's why, for example, this Angular example here, the team has not upgraded yet. They are using a 1.6.10. There was a 1.7, but they never went on when they never bumped. They never went up the numbers. And also, we are already 1.8.3 is out there, so they could. But this actually is a lot of work. But they didn't do it yet. But now they face the problem that there are known vulnerabilities, 7 already, related to this version. Yeah, so that's why these. If you talk about origin of findings, we also have a origin called open source health.
Yeah. So if we take one step back, there's a one overview dashboard for all security findings, all security findings in your code that you built yourself, but also in the code that you ingested or used, right? The open source libraries, third-party libraries.
Indeed, there's those two. Those two locations.
They are combined together.
They're combined together in this findings
in one dashboard. Let's continue to the next category, which is the configuration and setup. So we just looked at tooling and analyses and how does it look like. Now it's more about how to get the things up and running, how to get up to speed, and to know what to do. We again found three questions that we want to talk you through. One is about setting up multi-factor authentication. So if you have a phone that you want to have as a second provider of your second medium to understand who you are, basically, not only a password. How do you set that up? Second question is about the scope file. So about what you see in Sigrid. There may be a component called remainder, which is not something that you built. It's also not something we built. What is it? And what can I do with it? And CI. So how can I make use of Sigrid in my CI pipelines?
And then it's also when you have a lot of sub repos.
Like microservices.
Combining. Those are all part of the configuration and setup group of questions that we get.
Shall we get started with the first one?
I have a new phone. Who doesn't want to have a new phone?
I have a new phone.
You have a new phone.
And I want to set up MFA. How do I do that?
So if we talk about phones and talk about users, we actually talk about. I'll go there to this gear icon. So if you are administrator of a Sigrid of our in our platform, then you will see this icon, the settings icon. If you open it up, then you enter the user management part. So here is one colleague of mine, is a demo account, and he. When you talk about user management, we have two options. One option is that customers do the manual creation of provisioning, provisioning for users by adding users manually. And then if you do that, like this one, you have the option, the customer itself, so the user that we invited, that guy or girl has the option to enable multi-factor authentication, and the administrator will be able to see through these colors. So in this case, it's disabled, it's red, can also be green, and then the person has enabled multi-factor authentication. Multi-factor, you already said it, but it means that you know a password and also you have a code. To have something and to know something, that's the two factors that you need. And we can make it like this, that is customers are added through user management, and then they will do their multi-factor authentication. But sometimes people lose their phone and then they cannot access Sigrid anymore. So at the moment, in order to reset your MFA, it is a simple short email through the support desk. But we are working towards a situation where there is much more self-service. So we will, in the short term, we'll have an option for the administrator to reset the MFA for your user. You can already, if you talk about user management, you can give people access to all systems or to individual systems. You can also give a person a different role. You can give them another password, but there will be also here an option to reset their MFA.
Right.
Currently, but we have this question a lot. Currently, it's not done through the UI. You need to send us a support email.
All right.
Yeah.
So if we take one step back, just when we got started on this topic, you also mentioned there's other ways to do user management.
Yeah, indeed.
Can you talk us a bit about
we
that?
actually prefer that customers talk to us about single sign-on. Then this whole adding user button and also the whole MFA story goes away, because all the users are then provisioned through your Okta or Azure. So that's the best way to continue, that customers that we connect to their identity management.
Yeah.
And then the whole provisioning will be done through that.
Yeah, it has a benefit, right? If you have a large company that you have a lot of people working there.
Yeah.
And it's all managed through the same system. So whenever people come or go, they will be added or removed automatically, or at least their access will be automatically added or removed.
Indeed. This is a just-in-time provisioning, and these accounts will show up here in this list. Your administrator, he or she will still need to do the authorization part. So you always have the authentication, which is the
identity provider.
Yeah, identity provider, and then the authorization. That's the part where you need to authorize people to see stuff, right?
Yep.
So that will not go away.
All right.
Okay. So then, so this was a bit about user management, and we took the example of the multi-factor as a way segue into this subject.
Yeah. Shall we continue with the next one about scoping, about the remainder?
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
So we had a question, or we get some questions about what we see in Sigrid, especially when you look at maintainability. Sometimes in the component overview or in the list of components, you see a component that you didn't make yourself.
Yeah.
What is this thing?
What is this thing? Yeah, yeah. So in this case, we have a nice example system with Git here, and it has a big remainder component. So this is what we're talking about. So inside Sigrid, we talk about portfolio. Then every portfolio has systems, and if you dive into a system, then you see these components. So the component is also here. You can also see what type of technology there is, but also what type of components. And components are very important to start with. Why are these boxes important? Because we use these boxes to calculate the architecture metrics, for example. So the number of boxes and the way how they communicate the code within gives an idea of the solid principles and how well is everything structured. You can also see component dependencies here. So there are components talking to each other. There's also even circular dependencies, and so there's a lot of stuff going on if you look at the architecture of this system. But we take as a starting point these components as the things that we want to start to calculate. So if those components are wrong, or if there is a flaw, then first we need to fix this. First we need to fix this whole concept of components. Does the development team see the right components, and is there maybe any remainder?
Yeah. So how do we do that?
How do we do that? So in order to how do we do? Let's first see what is this remainder. The remainder contains all the source code that we could not locate and that we could not attribute to any of these other components. So this is the directory tree of this system, and we have created these components from it. So there is a block and a bulletin and a documentation, and there are these components. And we also have a component which is called remainder, and that's because we do not know at this moment. The analysis Sigrid does not know where this code should go to, where it belongs.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of making sure that all the code is fitted to the correct components, to the right boxes.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you do that? That was your question.
Yeah.
For that, I want to go to the documentation to show you something. So we have the documentation page. I navigated it through the menu, and there's a lot of documentation here. And I want to scroll down to the reference here section, and then we have scope configuration. And in this page, we explain how you can configure this Sigrid analysis. it's good to realize that normally when you onboard a system in Sigrid, we auto-detect your components and we auto-detect your files and technology. But sometimes this auto-detection doesn't work, or there is something else at play, and then the customer can change the configuration to make feedback as useful. And we talk about the scope, and actually what customers then create is a file, Sigrid YAML file. This is actually the file that is then created and is put into the source code. And this file controls the way Sigrid calculates its measurements. And a YAML file contains several parts. And today we're going to talk about this component part, because if this component part, if that is wrong, then you will see this remainder.
Yeah, you'll see something that's incorrect, right?
Yeah, yeah. And in order for this, the components, we have several versions of how you can do that. I'm scrolling down to the part of where we talk about components. Where the technology support. Here we are. Sorry, here's the components, and there's actually 3 ways to define components. So you can define components based on the directory structure. So if you have your code neatly put into directories, then there probably is no code outside these directories. Then everything is accounted for. So in this case, you do not see this remainder too often. You can also specify where the code is. Then also the remainder is very rare. We see remainder when people are starting to make this named components, whether they give the component a name and they use regular expressions to really filter out and put the code into.
There are specific ways or reasons to use this, right? I mean, I can imagine if you have an old global system, for example, it makes sense because everything's usually in one big, root directory or one folder.
Yeah, indeed.
Sometimes it's also different if you have C#, I think, right? And there's also a slight difference in how we detect it versus what it actually looks like for a developer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, indeed.
So in Java it's quite straightforward normally. But indeed, in the technology that you named, so sometimes the location where the files are stored has nothing to do with the component that they are in. So,
But so if you don't want any remainder components, the easiest way is to configure your Sigrid with component depth. That was the option that you showed, right?
Indeed, yeah, but the whole code. So we are using this remainder as an example to start talking about that there are components, and if those components are set wrong, from the, let's say, if there's an analysis with the console, if there's a customer using Sigrid, and if from day one these components are wrong, then the star rating and a lot of things are based on these components. So it's good to realize that you need to have a good picture, like a microscope, and putting it, making sure that the image is clear, right? You need to
adjust it to focus on the right point.
Right focus.
But while talking about focusing and talking about components within a system, how is it different or the same as subsystems?
Yeah, that's
to make the jump.
Yeah, that's a nice jump. So, so when we talk about the next subject, it has to do with what do we want to combine. So, and we have this metaphor of a fruit basket. So let's say we have a fruit basket where there's apple and pear and banana, and Sigrid can show you the score of the combined fruit basket. So then there's multiple repos combined. Can make sense for a stakeholder to see the overall score, or for example, the security findings across everything. But most development teams like to know what is the score for my banana,
or my apple, or my orange. Yes.
And in Sigrid, these fruit basket and these you can also see that fruit basket story here, because the Hadoop could be the fruit basket as a combined container, and then this project and common project, and those could be the different fruits. So it depends a bit of the ownership, who owns the repository or multiple repositories. And what we now see is a lot of people are using CI/CD to give us this to upload the code, and for that we have a nice picture that is here. It's called setting up Sigrid and then mapping repositories to systems. But this is something that is very important. Every time we start a new Sigrid, we contact the customer and talk to the customer about what is your way of development. Is it microservices? Do you want to see the scores for all the microservices, or do you want to see microservices combined? What do you want to see? Because every box here is every tile, every box is a system, and it has its own score. So it's also about the microscope. Do you want to zoom in on the DNA, or want to zoom out on the body of the person?
Yeah, on the organism.
On the organism. So where do you want to zoom?
Yeah.
And for that, we have this picture here that we ask the customer, okay, how do you see your source code? Do you talk from a stakeholder perspective? You normally talk about these systems in a larger functional scale. So in this case, there's a bank app and a core bank app and a mortgage advice. But so that's the business context. Managers could talk about we have 3 systems. But if you ask the technical guys, they would say, yeah, okay, those 3 systems, but underneath we have 5 or even more repos that combine, that make those systems.
Yep.
And then the question always is, how do you want to make that
visualize
it? Yeah, indeed. And in our story, we have actually two approaches. Either you have a backend repository that goes through CI and it gets visualized as an individual system in Sigrid.
So a separate tile, right?
Tile, yeah.
Yes.
So the front end is separate and the back end is separate. Or you can also decide to combine stuff. So the back end and the front end will be, we connect to their own pipeline, because these are different repositories. There's maybe a different team, maybe a different location, maybe different geographical, whatever, but there are different repositories. They each have their own pipeline with all their steps, and Sigrid is then one of the steps in the pipeline. And if you specify in the pipeline, the system is MyBank and the subsystem is MyBank backend, and here MyBank frontend, then Sigrid will automatically group those two into one tile.
Yeah, so that means that if we're looking at this picture, backend repository and front-end repository, maybe built by different teams, run through their own CI pipeline, get their own feedback into the team, right? So they can make changes to that, and then eventually are configured to be combined into one system in Sigrid.
Yeah, and then actually, yeah, you said it well, but actually then you have the best of both worlds, because the system in Sigrid shows you the trend line for the whole functional group. Mm-hmm. And stakeholders can look at it, and the owner and everybody who was interested in the progress of the system. Mm-hmm. But the developers, they are normally more focused to their own fruit.
Yeah. No, I understand.
They want to see how's my banana. Is my banana doing better than the pair of the other guys?
Yes.
So that's, we want to cater both use cases. So the developers get their feedback within their domain and their scope, and also the stakeholders get their feedback.
Yeah, the managers and so on get their feedback on a higher level, on a trend level,
on a more it's zooming out. So do you want to see the DNA of the organism, or do you want to see the whole group?
Yeah, the color of the hair. Yeah, right. Indeed. Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we're talking about CI, what kind of CI pipelines do you support?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Let's go back here to this nice list. We have this documentation. We're extending it every day, actually, but so all the major version control systems: GitHub, GitLab, Bitbucket, and Jenkins, Azure, TeamCity. I think then you have most of them.
Yeah.
And if customers are using SVN, then most probably they will send us a FTP upload, which also is still possible. But we do like to get started with CI.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, let's continue with the last one for today, which is about workflows.
Yeah.
And for the workflows, again, we picked out 3 main questions. So for example, I, as a developer, work on a particular branch on my code. I also want to see that feedback to what I did right now and not what I do in the end of a sprint, because only then we merge back to master and we publish it to the main to production environment.
Yeah.
Or how can I use Sigrid in my sprint review, or maybe put it a bit broader, and how do I use it in my agile workflow?
In my skilled agile framework.
Yes, indeed.
So no, those are good questions. So it's the part of the workflows indeed. Let's switch back to Sigrid to show you a bit. Let's start with those with the story of the Boy Scout. Let's start with the Boy Scout. So let's say you are a product owner, and let's say
yes,
Hugo the product owner.
Hello.
And you are a product owner, and you would like to do some improvements to your code. And you have asked the team for the next sprint to save, let's say, 10% of their time to fix some stuff. And you will just give them some examples of code that you think this can be improved. And they will be surprised that you come up with these very detailed, hand-picked, concrete, actionable items.
I'm so technical.
Yeah, you're so technical. You cannot hide it. So let's say again, we're gonna go into, let's say, Hadoop, and you looked at all these scores. I must say that starting with these ones, the module coupling is quite hard. Those are really the hard parts to start with. So let's give you a bit easier one. We're gonna for unit size, and then in the unit size, we also have a nice list of code snippets that are a bit on the long side, 400 lines, 500 lines, 533, and also are quite complex in the terms of McCabe. So if then else, if then those paths, right? And what you could do is you could navigate here, and you look at the colors, and these are the colors that are the highest risk, but also the hardest to fix. And if you scroll down, then there will be also some other colors that are a bit easier. But for today, you are product owner, and you say, hey guys, I would really like that you fix this one, and you can then, for example, set this one to prioritize, and make sure that you tell the team to start looking at refactoring this Explorer JavaScript file.
Yeah, so this is kind of the opposite as of accepting a risk, right?
Yeah, this is handing out a task.
Yes. Yeah.
But so not everybody likes this way of working, that the product owner defines what. But okay, so if you are, let's say, in another environment, then you can say, and that's the Boy Scout rule, you say, okay, guys, we go to the Code Explorer. We know that next week we're going to work on the cloud storage project. And then within that, there's the Huawei cloud. And we see already in the color scheme that there are some of these components that have more findings than others. But let's say we know that we're going to work here, and then maybe on this OBS client factory Java. So we know that we want to do some functional change in this part of the code. And then you can say to the team, hey guys, now that we're here, now that you are there, please make sure that you also fix this unit size stuff or the unit complexity. So, and these are less severe in terms of maintainability, but they are still there. And this is what we call a Boy Scout rule, meaning you go on a campsite and you clean the camp, you leave the campsite cleaner than you found it.
Yeah, so I see, for example, a few of them are orange. That means that they're less risky, right, than the red ones.
Than the dark red ones. Yeah. So and you could then say, okay, let's change this one to we'll fix.
Yeah, or prioritize.
Prioritize. Yeah. So you can add to the planning, and if you add to the planning, then you say, so that you're still the product owner. You say, hey guys, we know that we're going to work there. Let's add this to our task list. So this is a template, markdown template that you can simply copy inside your Jira or your other ticketing system to help the team make some progress in the next sprint.
Yeah, so what you just did is you prioritized some findings, and then you decided to also connect them to your issue tracker, which could be Jira, which could be an Azure backlog thing. You add them to the planning, you click go to planning, and you get an overview like this.
Yeah.
Where you have direct links between
Yeah.
your planning board and whatever you see here in Sigrid.
Yeah. And this is my kind of example workflow. It's how do you prioritize and get those findings to the teams?
Yeah.
So we have two approaches.
Yes. Maybe we can go back a bit to the first question of this last category, which is about branching.
Yeah, branching. Yeah. That's a good one. So normally in Sigrid we expect, or let's say also the stakeholders, I think they would expect that these systems that you see here, that these represent the production status of the code. So they want to know security findings. They want to see. So we call that the master or the main. So here we see the main or the master, so the most recent one that is in production, right? That's what you want to see. But sometimes customers, they have a very long period between the branch that they're working on and the main or master that is in production. So then we also can advise them to have, let's say, a second tile for the same system, but then from a different branch. So you can decide to have a second system in Sigrid, and then you can specify that one is for the main and one is for the master. That is the situation where you want to have, let's say, the twins that you want to see both twins on the dashboard. But there's also the situation where we just have one system on the dashboard, and then we look at this basic workflow where we have a master or main branch. So there's just one thing on one tile, one system on the main on the dashboard. You publish this regularly, and this publish is actually triggered when the developers are opening up a pull request or a merge request in GitLab. So developers are working in a feature branch. The feature branch has been derived from the master branch, and then the feature branch they receives commits. Let's say a few days or a week. And then after this week, this feature branch is ready. And then the process of reviewing starts. That's called the developer conversation. And in that developer conversation, a lot of tools, they run in the pipeline, like Sigrid. And Sigrid gives you the pull request feedback. And then the developer can see their feedback for their branch in their own environment. So we decorate your pull request for GitHub, for example, and then we present to the developer with findings about his or her work. And if he then agrees, if everybody agrees, then you publish it to the dashboard.
So that's two flows, right? The one flow could be to have both your branch and your production environment together in Sigrid into one separate tiles.
Yes.
The other flow is where you as a developer keep the changes you make a bit more to yourself.
Yeah.
Right, add to your team maybe in your CI workflow.
Yeah.
And after you decided to continue to publish it to Sigrid. And both make sense.
Both make sense,
I would say, right? Yeah. So what I want to do indeed is wrap up the session of today a little bit. For example, what we did and what we looked at quite a lot under the lead of Michiel is at the documentation of Sigrid. So within this documentation, I highlighted a few parts that may be of more interest to you, but everything is interesting to read. It's not only about setting up Sigrid, it's not only about understanding the metrics, but it's definitely also about how to employ Sigrid into your process. So it's more than just a quick start guide, as to say. So please do go there, check it out. If you've already did that before, some stuff may have changed. So please do that again. It is really interesting to go over that.
Yeah, we edited a lot. Yeah.
We edited a lot indeed. Then if we look forward, we were now at Ask Me Anything number 9. It's the last one of this year. And next year, we will just continue on every third Thursday, depending on the holidays, sometimes a bit earlier or later. And the next one is on January 18, where our colleague Ken Vernijen will talk about another new feature that we recently already introduced, but didn't give a lot of attention to, is the portfolio objectives. So where the metrics, the maintainability metrics and security metrics are objective and really provide you with a line and a comparison, objectives can differ based on your use case. So if you have a system that you want to continue use for a very long time, or you have a very critical system or a system that is not connected to the internet, all of them may have different rules and different objectives to work with.
Yeah.
And our colleague Ken Vernaaien will talk you through how you can connect your business goals to your IT goals.
Yeah.
And then on number 11 is the end of February, where we'll share some tips and tricks. We don't have a speaker for that yet, but we'll get there. You can at least already sign up for the one in January on the website if you go to the link that you see here up the left side. And with that said, we are at the end of today's session. I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, we did. Right?
We did, yes.
We did.
And hope to see you next time. Bye bye.